Hi everyone, this is Sayanti bringing you another episode of Sayanti Fine Arts. It is still May, so I am still painting mermaids, and this time I am painting a mermaid with acrylic paints. So what you are seeing is that I have sketched out the mermaid painting on a canvas panel, and I'm using a linen panel here from Centurion, and it's 8 by 10. And then I am putting down a piece of painter's tape just to mark my horizon. That would give me a very nice sharp edge, or a straight line for that matter. Next, I'm wetting the entire surface of the water area, or rather the sky area, I'm sorry, with water. And then I'm going to apply some paint, and I'm going to use cerulean blue and a lot of white and a little bit of cobalt blue in the sky. So all I'm doing in the sky area is getting a nice even smooth blend of the blues and whites, and I'm starting with darker on the top, and the more I'm going towards the horizon, I'm getting it lighter and lighter and fading it to an almost gray blue white color at the horizon. So that's the idea. However, this is acrylic paint, so you will need a couple of coats of the paint to get it covered and to the desired extent and make it work out. So yeah, and you might have to give it a little bit time, like a few minutes between the coats for each layer to dry. And if you are in a big hurry, then you can use a hair dryer to dry your paint. Just keep it a little bit away from your painting. And that is it about the sky. There is nothing much to it. Once the sky is laid down, then I will darken the corners or the edges a little bit with more darker blue. So the idea once again is darker at the top and edges, and slowly fade it down to a very light blue at the horizon. Once this paint is laid down, then I am going to redraw the moon with a damp brush. And by what I mean by redraw is that while the paint is still wet, I'm going to pick up the area of the moon, pick up the paint from the area of the moon, so that the white of the canvas panel shows through. And why I'm doing this, I could have painted it with white paint itself, but the canvas was still dry, so I can just scoop up some paint instead. That way a little bit of the blue still remains, and it mixes with the white of the moon and kind of gives it a very nice feel. But if your canvas has dried by that time, no worries, you can just paint your moon with a white paint. Now you will see me kind of freehanding when I am painting the moon. However, you don't have to do that. You can use a stencil, you can use a coin or a bottle cap or whatever that matches the size of the moon that you want to get, and paint the moon. Or you can even outline the moon first and then paint the moon. Now once I have scratched out or just pulled out as much as paint as possible from the surface of the canvas, I will start applying some paint on the moon area, and I'm going to apply kind of a mix of yellow and white. But you have to be very careful while doing this, because there is already a little bit of blue on there. So if you add too much yellow, or if that gets mixed with your blue, you can get a green color on your moon, and really you don't want those kind of unknown colors on your moon surface. So that's pretty much it. Now you can allow the paint to dry, or you can just start painting on top of that wet yellow white paint with some purple and brown. You can use only purple, or you can use a mix of purple and brown. That is totally up to you. It doesn't make a lot of difference. And you cannot kind of fade it out to the background. Then bring back some of the bright white now. And remember, all this I'm doing while the paint is still wet. So the white that I'm putting is kind of blending into the already existing paint, and that is totally fine. Now I'm removing the tape from the bottom part and sticking it on the top part, because now I'm going to paint the horizon line from the sea side. With the sea, you don't have to be very careful. You can just use a mix of blue, and once again I'm using cerulean blue, a little bit of phthalo blue here, and I'm also using a aqua blue color here because of water. With the water, I wanted a little bit of greenish look as well. But if you don't have all those colors, you can just use any blue and green and mix it with some white, and that will give just the same effect. Now you can see that I'm not at all worrying about blending because I would need some ripple effect, and for that I would anyways put in some line. So I'm just putting the base blue and then lightening some of the areas by adding some white. Next, what I'm going to do is make a very muddy mix out of yellows, browns, a little bit of purple, a little bit of black, and then draw out the edges of my rocks first. Once the edges are drawn out, then I'm going to add in kind of the darker areas first, the more dark area first. And for the dark area, I'm using a mix of purple and brown with a little bit of black. But first, you have to get the entire surface covered by any rock colored paint for that matter, so you can use any shades of brown anywhere. And you can see I'm not worrying at all about blending because in the rocks I want some textures, so more the number of layers the better. I do not have to worry about blending at all. I'm first coming back now with the darker colors, and I'm going to paint out the darker areas first. I'm kind of using a reference photo here to kind of get a feel of how the rocks would look like, what shape and size, and where the dark and lights are. But you don't have to stay true to a particular reference photo for that matter. You can add in a little bit of your imagination. All I'm using the reference photo is to kind of give me an idea about where the light source is, and thus understand which areas should be lighter and darker. And from there you can hype up the contrast and make a little bit of adjustment and make the rocks bigger or smaller or darker or lighter, and make your own adjustments for your own painting. That is the best part of being a painter, that you can take something that is already existing and either paint it just like that is fine too, or make it your own by adjusting the way you want it to look like. Now you can see I'm adding some ripple effects. What I'm doing is I'm using a flat brush, and with the edge of the brush and some blue paint, I'm adding some ripple effect. Once I've added the darker blues, I'll go in between those darker blues and add some lighter colors. Sometimes I'm using pretty much a white, although I have a little bit blue mixed in with that. Sometimes using the aqua blue, and sometimes I'm using a mix of cerulean blue and white, and that will kind of create all the different kinds of ripples. Just remember that underneath the moon, the water area would be brighter than the rest of the areas, so brighter in the center, and then as you move away from the center, the water surface gets darker. However, you will have to get some lighter ripples in the edges too. You can see what I mean just by looking at the painting. I'm coming back at the rocks once again, and this time I'm laying the darker colors first. You will see that as I'm going towards the left and bottom of the painting, it gets darker, and the right side and the top parts of the rocks are lighter. I am kind of varying between different color mixes, sometimes a light gray, sometimes a light brown, and sometimes kind of a yellow ochre color. I'm using all of these different colors to create my lights and darks here. And you don't have to get this at one go. You can just keep on changing the colors till you feel happy with the effect of light and dark, or the contrast, or the texture of the rock. And the more layers you put here, it's actually the better, because it gives you more and more texture look, and that actually works great for the rocks. In fact, in some areas I didn't even worry about putting the after putting the paint, I didn't even worry about kind of smoothing it out. It just added to the texture. Some areas I'm just keeping some very bright colors of like yellow and mixed with a little bit of white, and some areas I'm even adding some kind of aqua colors. just mix it out, match it out, create some texture that will add actually value to the painting. It will actually add dimension and texture, and it will make it look more and more realistic, and punch up the contrast, make the dark areas really dark so that the lighter areas stand out against it, and that will make it look even more amazing. This is a very simple painting. I'm explaining this so many times, and it kind of sounds like as if I'm doing some really hard work, difficult things to do, but it is not. The whole painting took me less than 2 hours. That itself tells how kind of easy it is. Now I added a little bit of splatter with a light creamish colored paint on the surface of the rocks. You can do it, you can skip it. It just added more texture. Next, I'm going over to the body of the mermaid, and I'm first filling it out with kind of an aqua blue green mix. I used the aqua blue green color that I had and mixed it with a little bit of phthalo blue. And underneath the body, because of the shadows, I'm making it much more darker than the rest of the area. And then I'll come back to the body of the mermaid once again. Now around the edges of the body, those areas, I have to sharpen them a little bit. So I added some ripples in the water, added some details to the rocks, and cleaned those edges up nicely. Once those edges are cleaned up, I'll go back to the body of the mermaid. But first, I'm just going to fill out the areas. For the hair, I'm using pretty much a dark mix of purple, blue, and black. I keep the black at the minimum because black is a very dulling color. Once you add black, those areas look very negative in the painting. So I'm adding a very little black and using mostly purples and blues, and a little bit of brown also for the hair. And then I'm adding a little bit of highlight to the left hand side that is closer to the moon to kind of give it a light and shadow effect. Now going back to the body area, I added some darker blues first, and then went in between and added some lighter blues with the aqua blue mixed with a little bit of white. For the tail, I'm doing the same thing. I am first creating the rays with darker aqua colored blue. It's mostly phthalo blue mixed with a little bit of aqua green and a tiny little bit of white, and then I'm adding a lot of white to that mixture and painting the lighter areas. To the top part of the abdomen of the body, I am adding a lot of blue and a little bit of purple here because this is kind of a shadowy shaded area, so I'm not adding a lot of lighter colors to this area. Onto the body, I just painted it with a kind of dark brown color because it's more of like a evening nighttime scene. So even if the mermaid is there is no need to focus on the skin tone of the mermaid. It's kind of going to be a darker shade anyways. And that is pretty much it about the painting. It is a very simple painting, but it was very enjoyable for me. I hope it is enjoyable for you as well. Do try it out and let me know what you thought about this painting. And even if you don't want to try it out, you definitely should let me know what you thought about the painting in the comment section as usual. Your comments motivate me. It means the whole world to me. And of course, give me a thumbs up. Once again, that helps a lot, really. And if you're not already subscribed, do hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell as well so that you get notified every time I post a new video. And I will see you in a few days.